Welcome. You're tuned in because you want to get up to speed on something important fast. No fluff, just the core information.
That's the plan.
Today, we are diving into Florencia 13, also known as F-13. It's a criminal street gang based right here in Southern California with a pretty deep history.
It really is. And for this deep dive, we're mainly drawing from an informational document that lays out, the gang's background, their activities, some major events.
Right, so our mission here is basically to pull out the key facts about F-13, where they came from, what they're involved in, the big moments, their connections, just to give everyone a clear picture.
Exactly. A solid foundation.
Okay, let's start with the name then, Florencia 13. Our source says this name dates back to the 1960s.
Uh-huh. The 60s. And it's tied directly to the Florence area of Los Angeles County.
So, named after the neighborhood. Pretty straightforward.
It seems so, yeah. But what's really crucial right from the get-go is understanding their link to the Mexican Mafia.
Oh.
Florencia 13, they're not really independent. They operate under the control of the Mexican Mafia. That's fundamental.
The Mexican Mafia.
Yeah.
That name carries a lot of weight. So F-13 is sort of a subsidiary in a way.
You could think of it like that, yeah. They have that allegiance, that structure.
And this isn't a new group. The timeline we have is pretty staggering. It suggests activity going all the way back to the 1930s. Is that right? Up to today.
That's what the source indicates, yes.
Yeah.
From the 30s right through to the present. It's a, remarkably long time for any group like this.
It really is. Decades upon decades. Now, you mentioned their roots are in L.A., in Florence, but they didn't just stay there, did they?
Oh, definitely not. Their territory or influence, it spread quite widely over time. We're talking East Phoenix, other parts of South LA, of course.
Okay.
But then internationally, too. Mexico, Brazil, the Netherlands, even Canada are mentioned.
Wow, okay. Netherlands,
Right.
Brazil. That's unexpected.
It is. And then domestically, states like Oregon, Colorado, Florida, Hyde Park, Washington, Utah, Arizona. The list is pretty extensive.
That geographic spread is kind of mind-boggling. How does a gang that starts in one LA neighborhood manage that kind of expansion?
That is a really good question. It suggests, significant organization, maybe migration patterns, deliberate expansion. It's complex.
And it must involve networking, maybe even loosely affiliated chapters or something.
Possibly.
Hmm.
All likely still acknowledging that F-13 identity and ultimately the Mexican Mafia connection.
Right. So who are the members, the demographics?
The document states they're mainly composed of Mexican Americans.
Okay.
And the estimated size, it's put at around 2,000 to 3,000 members, maybe more.
2,000 to 3,000. That's a pretty significant force.
It absolutely is. And that size, plus the wide geography, it points to, a substantial capacity for criminal activity.
Which brings us to what they actually do.
Yeah.
And the list is, it's long.
Very long. Drug trafficking is high on the list. Assault, robbery, extortion, arms trafficking.
Theft, murder, racketeering, illegal gambling, fraud. It's basically a full-service criminal enterprise.
Pretty much covers the spectrum, doesn't it? It suggests they're adaptable, involved in whatever is profitable or necessary for control.
And different parts of the gang might specialize, you think?
That's plausible. Or different opportunities arise in different territories. The Mexican Mafia connection probably helps open doors to different illicit markets, too.
Makes sense. Now, no gang exists in a vacuum. They have friends and enemies. What about alliances for F-13?
Well, the big one, as we've said, is the Mexican Mafia. That's the umbrella.
Right.
Then other Sureño gangs, those Southern California Latino gangs, often aligned with the Mexican Mafia, especially inside prisons.
Okay. Any others mentioned?
Yeah, Pueblo Bishop Bloods, Mad Swan Bloods, Harvard Park Brims. And interestingly, it mentions a former alliance with the East Coast Crips.
Former. Okay, that always signals some kind of story, some conflict there. We should circle back to that.
Definitely. And on the other side, the rivals. Some big names there, too.
Who are they up against?
The document lists the 18th Street Gang, another huge rival. Also the 38th Street Gang, Grape Street Watts Crips.
Okay, classic LA rivalries.
Watts Vario, Grape Street, 13 Hat Gang Watts Crips, and Huntington Park Locos. These rivalries fuel a lot of the violence, obviously.
Absolutely. Territorial disputes, reputation, retaliation. It's a constant cycle. Now, there's a really disturbing point raised in the material about racially motivated attacks.
Yes. This is extremely serious. The source mentions that law enforcement, specifically the LA County Sheriff's Department, DEA, ATF, targeted F-13 partly because of attacks against African Americans.
Targeted them for the attacks, meaning F-13 was carrying them out.
Exactly. And it wasn't just alleged. The source notes that court testimony and even judges' rulings confirm these attacks were motivated purely by race.
That adds a whole other horrifying dimension to their activities. It's not just about crime for profit or power.
Precisely. It's hate crime, essentially, woven into their game activity. It explains why law enforcement took such a strong stance.
Understandable. Okay, let's go back to that broken alliance you mentioned, the East Coast Crips. What happened there?
So the source says the conflict started over drugs. Apparently, East Coast Crip members stole a large quantity of drugs from F-13 members.
Okay, a major breach in that world.
A huge one. But the key thing is the reaction. The Mexican Mafia stepped in.
How so?
They reportedly issued a green light on the East Coast Crips because of the theft.
A green light, which basically means attack on site.
Essentially, yeah. An order authorizing violence, potentially lethal, against members of that group. It shows the power the Mexican Mafia has, setting rules and enforcing them even between powerful gangs like the Crips and F-13.
They're like the board of directors handing down major decisions.
Wow.
Okay, so the document also gives specific examples of F-13 violence, more recently too.
It does. There's an incident from January 2019, a shooting outside the Fashion Place Mall in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Utah, again, showing that reach.
Exactly. It apparently followed an argument with Norteños members, who are traditional rivals of Sureños. 2 F-13 members were arrested.
And they were linked to other crimes too.
Yes. The source says they were also charged for a previous shooting, this one at a cemetery. It highlights ongoing serious violence.
Definitely. And there was another one, even more deadly.
Tragically, yes. October 2019, at a place called KZ Tequila, a bar and restaurant in Kansas City, Kansas.
Kansas City, another state far from LA.
Right. Multiple people were killed, many injured. Just horrific. Suspected F-13 members were charged with murder and attempted murder.
God, the impact on those communities, it's devastating. These incidents really show the severity of their violence.
They absolutely do. And it leads into how law enforcement has tried to tackle F-13. There was a major operation mentioned, Operation Joker's Wild.
Yeah, sounds like a movie title. What was that about?
It was a huge multi-agency investigation. The main focus was drug trafficking, extortion, and very specifically, those racially motivated murders of African Americans we talked about.
Multi-agency meaning?
Oh, a lot of players.
Yeah.
The LA High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Task Force, DEA, ATF, LA County Sheriffs, ICE, IRS, even the County Probation Department.
Wow, they threw the book at them, basically. The scale sounds enormous.
It really was. In 2007, they indicted 102 members. It led to a massive gang raid, described at the time as the largest in U.S. history. 96 arrests were made in that sweep.
And the charges were heavy.
Extremely. Drug trafficking, attempted murder, rape, extortion, the whole gamut we discussed earlier.
So did it work? Did the operation have a lasting impact?
Well, the results were pretty striking, according to the source. By 2009, nearly all of those indicted, 94 out of 102, had either been convicted or pleaded guilty.
That's a very high success rate for such a large operation.
It is. It shows what coordinated efforts can achieve. And the trials themselves apparently produced more evidence that confirmed, yet again, how much control the Mexican Mafia exerted over F-13.
So it reinforced that hierarchy we talked about. It must take incredible resources to mount an operation like that.
No doubt. Years of investigation, manpower, coordination across all those agencies.
Okay, now shifting gears slightly, the source includes a couple of, frankly, weird cultural side notes about F-13.
Yeah, these were definitely unexpected. Kind of fascinating, though.
Right. First, there was a restaurant in New York City named after them.
Yeah, in Greenwich Village, of all places. A Southern California-style Mexican restaurant called Florencia 13. Apparently, it operated under that name from 2005 to 2014.
That is bizarre. Why would anyone name their restaurant after an active, violent street gang?
That's the question, isn't it? The source doesn't explain the reasoning, but it's a strange piece of trivia. Maybe provocation, ignorance, an unknown connection. Hard to say.
Very strange. And then there's something about a theme song.
The source mentions that the song Florence by the Paragons from way back in 1957.
1957.
Yeah, that song is reportedly considered the official theme song of Florencia 13.
An official theme song for a street gang from the 50s.
Apparently so. It adds this weird, almost retro cultural layer to their identity. Maybe it was popular when the gang was forming. Or it just resonated somehow.
It's one of those details that makes you realize how these groups build their own internal culture, their own symbols.
Exactly. Beyond just the crime, there's identity, history, even music, apparently.
Fascinating, if a bit surreal. Okay, so let's pull this all together. What are the main things we've established about Florencia 13 from this deep dive?
Well, first, they have a very long history, potentially stretching back almost a century, rooted in the Florence area of LA.
Right, long history.
Second, their criminal activities are incredibly diverse: drugs, violence, extortion, you name it. And third, their geographic reach is surprisingly wide, far beyond California, even international.
Okay, history, diverse crime, wide reach.
Yeah.
What else?
The crucial connection to the Mexican Mafia they operate under its control, that's central.
Definitely.
And then the disturbing element of racially motivated violence, particularly against African Americans, which drew significant law enforcement focus, like Operation Joker's Wild.
And the high-profile violent incidents in places like Utah and Kansas City.
Exactly. So putting it all together, the information gives us a pretty solid grasp of F-13 as a major, long-lasting, geographically dispersed, and violent criminal organization operating within that larger Mexican Mafia structure.
Yeah, it paints a complex picture. So as we wrap up, maybe something to think about is, how does a group like this maintain itself for so long?
That's a great question.
What factors allow it to survive crackdowns like Operation Joker's Wild and continue to operate across such vast distances? And flipping that, what does it tell us about the challenges law enforcement faces when trying to deal with these kinds of entrenched, adaptable networks?
It really highlights the difficulty, doesn't it? The persistence, the reach, the underlying structures. It's a huge challenge.
Something to definitely chew on. Hopefully this deep dive has given everyone a clearer, more informed perspective on Florencia 13 based on the information we had available.